Right. Well, hello and welcome to UK Column at the Seaside. Today we are not doing a news programme in the studio once again because that would be too television-like, and we want to focus again on ATVOD. I think we're really going to focus on one particular board member today, and as you can see we are genuinely at the seaside because the seagulls are shouting like crazy. So
it's real seagulls. They are actually real seagulls. That's not audio inserted into this tape. They are real.
They could be drones,
possibly.
Yes, but anyway, we're going to focus on Ian McBride today, who is an ATVOD board member. He is another independent board member, well, you may have thought that we said enough about independent board members in the last video, but in fact this guy is even more spectacular than the others.
Yeah, it's a key point because we've got an organisation and we'll continue to push that they meet behind closed doors, they decide their own policy. So we know that there's been a meeting where individuals have met to decide the determination on the UK column. We have no idea who those individuals are. There are no minutes of the meetings posted at the moment. So we decided the thing to do was have a look at the individuals and see just how independent they are.
So let's just run through his CV. Before he was a board member on the Authority for Television on Demand, he was a founder, in fact I still believe he is, a founder member of Media Compliance Services LLP. We're going to come on to that in a second. But before that he was Managing Editor and Director of Compliance at ITV Granada Media Group. Before that he was Managing Editor, Head of Factual Drama at Granada Media Group. Before that he worked for World in Action at Granada Television. So once again we've got another genuinely independent personality acting as an independent person on the board and the determination committee of ATVOD. So remember, in order to make a determination they require a majority independent members on their determination panel, and this is one of them, clearly independent. So what have we discovered about him?
Well, it's job to know where to start really, but I'll just take you back, if I may, if the seagulls are allowed me, take you back to the fact that we pointed out a couple of days ago that Peter Johnson, who's actually the chief executive of ATVOD, he had originally come from the British Board of Film Censors. So I just would like you to remember that. And Peter Johnson, chief executive of ATVOD, of course working very, very closely with those board members that are chosen, selected, we don't know how, in order to form judgment on others. So if we take Mr. Ian McBride, as Mike's just indicated, he is also a director of another company, Media Compliance Services LLP, and he works with two other individuals, a lady called Belinda Copeland and a gentleman called Patrick Swaffer. Now, why is this of interest? Well, it's of interest because both of those people were formerly working with a very large media law firm called Goodman Derrick LLP Solicitors. And we thought it was particularly interesting that on October 2012, Patrick Swaffer just happened to be appointed as president of the British Board of Film Classification. So we've got the chief executive of ATVOD, who was originally the British Board of Film Classification himself. He was help setting policy, and he's then into ATVOD. He's working with Ian McBride. Ian McBride is working in a company, Media Compliance Services, where one of the partners, Patrick Swaffer, just happens to be selected as the president of the British Board of Film Classification. Now, if you think this is a bit circular, you've got to stay with us, because what we're going to describe is what many people in the Navy, of course there are no Navy ships behind us at all, the sound is deserted, but if there were to be any Navy ships here, people would tell you that what I'm about to describe is known in colloquial naval terms as a snake's wedding of vested interests.
Like running over your own towed array sonar, right?
Something like that, yes, absolutely. So What's of interest about Patrick Swaffer? Well, he was originally himself a consultant to this media law firm Goodman Derrick. In fact, he was managing partner. But he's also got another job, and that is a recorder in the Crown Court. Now, there's some variation in the definitions of what a recorder actually does, but we are taking it that he will sit as a judge from time to time, as he may be called to do so. So this would tend to indicate that we've got a practicing judge who is also helping to form political policy for control of the media.
So no conflict of interest, no reduction of the separation of powers.
No.
None at all.
None at all. So stay with us, because let's focus a little bit on this law firm Goodman Derrick, because it's just a coincidence that they happen to be the very law firm that's boasted that they were working to bring together the BBC, Sky B, Channel 4, ITV and Agiva for the launch of Freeview. Now, what this is an internet connected TV, Freeview Connect, and this is the mainstream media companies now starting to move into, yes, you've guessed it, digital on-demand services. And the vehicle that they use to run the internet connected onslaught onto digital on-demand is called Digital UK. So we decided we'd take a little look into Digital UK, and it became very interesting indeed. The Chief Executive Officer just happens to be a Jonathan Thompson. He's former Director of Strategy of Ofcom and also Channel 4. So if it's not enough to be the regulator, it's best to have good connections into the industry yourself. But of course, Mr. Jonathan Thompson, totally independent, well, except of course when he was Ofcom. And he's helped by a very nice lady called Caroline Thompson. She just happened to be the former Chief Operating Officer of the BBC and also a former Head of Corporate Affairs Channel 4. So this is looking pretty good. What we've got is a cartel forming between all of the big British media companies, and they are clearly desperate now to secure the same sort of viewing dominance in on-demand web-based TV that they've enjoyed over the airwaves to date. But let's go back to the Media Compliance Services LLP, because if you visit their website, they say that they have a recommended partner called Rights TV, and Rights.tv is working in the field of intellectual property and rights, media rights. And if you want to make sure you're getting the best buck for your production, then you need to be speaking to them. But not just a small company now, because they've been taken over by a massive global company called Compact Media Group, which boasts 500 clients. And if you want to take a delve into that organisation, the Chief Operating Officer is a David Johnson. He's got 20 years of experience in TV, senior management, commercial and financial. And of course he's worked with the BBC, just happening to develop their online and digital TV.
Of course, he couldn't be related in any way to Peter Johnson, who's the Chief Executive of ATVOD.
Well, Johnson's quite a common name, Mike. It's about as common as the seagulls that are flying around us, but one has to start asking questions. Are these people literally in bed together? We have a mix of people who say they are there to regulate others. We know that Peter Johnson is on record saying part of his job is to help manage competition to the BBC, Channel 4, ITV, Sky B, etc. We now know that the UK column forms unbelievably dangerous competition for these organisations, to the extent that Peter Johnson has had to unleash his chums, all independent, part-time judges working with law firms, but they're the people who are going to silence the UK column and free media unless many people in this country wake up.
Now, the other organisation that Ian McBride was involved in was the Broadcasters Liaison Group, and this is really a lobby organisation. It involved the BBC, Channel 5, S4C, ITV, BBC Scotland, ITV Wales, BBC Wales, and so on. And it also had at their meetings Ofcom in attendance, the BBC in attendance, and the Electoral Commission. Why the Electoral Commission needed to be in that, your guess is as good as mine.
Well, if you're going to put over political policy in your programming, if what we're dealing with, of course, is raw government propaganda pushed through the BBC and these other media channels, then you will need to see how well you're doing as far as the vote's concerned, wouldn't you?
Indeed. So our friend Ian here, working with this lobby group, they lobbied the Labour Party, specifically Tim Nuttall. They lobbied the Conservative Party, George Slater. They lobbied the Lib Dems, Lord Renard. They lobbied SNP, Stephen Noon. They lobbied UKIP, Clive Page and John Bufton. They lobbied the Socialist Labour Party, the Scottish Socialist Party, Solidarity, Scottish Senior Citizens Unity Party. But those that did not attend were Plaid Cymru and the Greens. And Forward Wales, so at least some people didn't attend. So that was a bit of lobbying going on behalf of the mainstream media with all the major political parties, and of course our independent Ian McBride was part of that.
Totally independent. Unbelievably independent.
Yes.
Except when he's presumably not being independent.
Indeed.
Yep. Well, this comes down to really what...
transparency.
Transparency.
Yeah.
What can people do about this?
Well, the other thing we wanted to bring to your attention again today was the fact that ATVOD, of course, believes that it is not subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So we had a chat with the Information Commissioner today to find out exactly what the status of these types of organisations is. And the Information Commissioner's line on this, and I know other people have different views on this, but the Information Commissioner's line on this is that if the government outsources a service to a private company, that private company is not subject to the Freedom of Information Act unless that private company is wholly owned by the public body which had outsourced the service in the first place. So in the case of ATVOD, of course, we don't know exactly who owns ATVOD at the moment. We assume that it's wholly owned by Ofcom, and if it is wholly owned by Ofcom, then it in fact is subject to the Freedom of Information Act, although they deny that they are. That perhaps hints that the ownership is elsewhere. But remember, ATVOD, a limited company with a board of directors and apparently no transparency and no accountability to anybody.
Yeah.
Possibly except for Ofcom.
So what we can say is not only in the media field, but what we're now discovering is, of course, the government, the Conservative government, which boasted that it was going to be a government of transparency, and Francis Moore, to the most opaque man in politics, was going to head that transparency. As the government privatises huge chunks of public infrastructure and organisations which are supposed to protect us, what they're also doing at a stroke is putting those organisations outside public scrutiny through freedom of information.
Yeah.
Are we making this up?
Some people may think so.
But we're not.
Perhaps you need to look.
So
please check everything that we say, because we're just completely wrong on all of this stuff.
Well, unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. I wish I'd put my sunglasses on, because unusually for Plymouth it's very sunny here, so we don't have to tell you what the weather is. It's virtually tropical on the seafront.
It is sunny, but the skies are not blue, and I leave it up to you to work out why that is.
Yeah. So I thought we might just say what's been happening around the UK column at the moment. We've certainly had a lot of interest. We've now done some interviews with channels in America. It's clear that people over in the States understand how significant this attack on the UK column is. We've described accurately what has happened. We've pointed out that we've taken material down in order to avoid coming under the umbrella of ATVOD, and of course this is the thin end of the wedge. So people in the States absolutely realising that where it goes from here is ATVOD tries now to regulate anybody who's putting up a video with a little bit of quality, They've got some production elements. They've got lower thirds, I think they're called, aren't they, Mike? And it's beginning to look a bit professional. Then ATVOD is going to come after you. And of course, people in the States are also warning that the American government is now coming for censorship of the free press, the free media, and Alex Jones has been warning in particular over the last couple of weeks that the American government is now banning his broadcast to the American military, and of course they are Alex Jones has also been explaining that he's been watching Hillary Clinton. Well, she's pretty transparent. She thinks that there ought to be even more tighter controls on people daring to speak the truth on the internet. So America, we've had contact from as far away as Australia, and we'll shortly be doing an interview with some of their free media people. They understand what this means. If UK column goes down as a result of British government censorship, then we are very close to David Cameron, King Cameron's dictatorship. So what sort of things have people been doing? Well, a lot of people have been contacting ATVOD Direct. I'll just read you out this email. It says to ATVOD Management, having learned of your attempt at silencing the excellent UK column, its video messages via YouTube, and your attack on free speech, I write to express my total objection to what you're trying to do. Some of us realise that what is going on in the UK regards the attacks on our freedoms, and we will not stand idly by and be forced to watch only the propaganda put out by our controlled media, such as the biased BBC. This is a formal complaint about your heavy-handed interference in our daily activities, and I question exactly what authority you have to carry out such oppressive censorship in what is supposed to be a democracy. Someone high up in your organisation needs to remember the words in the following quote, often wrongly attributed to Voltaire. There's a little bit of corruption in the email here, but essentially it's saying, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will fight to the death your right to say it. Many people relate to this. You seem to be making up your objectives, rules and regulations as you go along. And then to bring up on Mike's point, this person says, as such, under the Freedom of Information Act, I would appreciate receiving full information on your organisation. Well, of course, here we are, because this gentleman's not going to get that information because we think that ATVOD is going to hide from freedom of information.
Well, they have already been hiding from freedom of information. They have denied past freedom of information requests.
Yeah.
So it's done.
Well, we've got another one here from a Brian, good man. It says, as far as I can see, ATVOD is a scam, much like the Performing Rights Society, and they are fee chasing. Unfortunately, they have quasi-government approval, but there must be an appeal system. I suggest you contact a gentleman called Simon Pook, who's a human rights solicitor, who's been acting for the Bart Moss anti-fracking people with considerable success. Now, we can tell you that the fracking community in particular are desperately concerned about this attack on UK column and censorship, because, as you will be well aware, almost nothing in the mainstream media reflecting protest. And of course, many people in their emails have pointed out to us that the BBC 2 weeks ago simply did not report on 50,000 people demonstrating in London against David Cameron's austerity measures. A person here, we'll just do this one, was kind enough to email their MP, Steve Webb. I send this to you as I'm sure you will agree that you do not advocate what is this censorship of the internet and the removal of yet another of our freedoms. I have searched the rules and guidance from the website of ATVOD, and they are so loose and ambiguous that for this authority to claim UK column breaks any of them is complete nonsense. I ask you to look at them and reply to me with your conclusions. ATVOD is acting outside of their remit and threatening everyone on YouTube. The UK column does not run an on-demand television programme. and it certainly does not threaten vulnerable adults or children or incite hatred. In fact, if it were television, as no bad language or sexual content is ever displayed, this would be in complete contrast to the content of the string of programmes that make up what is broadcast today. So a pretty angry person here, and they've been kind enough to email their MP. So people taking action, Mike, which
Yes,
is good to see.
Yeah.
So can we say to people, if you are now getting really interested in what this means, the British government has now declared its intention to censor the internet. Please get this message out to as many people as you can. Twitter, tweet, email, ring your friends, write a letter. We need as many people as possible in the British public to understand that alongside the criminal government we have, alongside the paedophiles within our government and the establishment, we now have a government absolutely hell-bent on censoring anybody who stands up for free speech on the internet.
So I think that's it for today. As we once again are not in the studio, we're in fact in my back garden, I have to get up and switch the camera off.
Perhaps I'll just say that if you've noticed the complete absence of warships in the sound behind us, remember that a couple of miles upriver is the largest naval base in Europe, about 340 hectares of naval base, but unfortunately no ships to be seen. This will be the situation with free media if we allow the government to do its censorship through ATVOD. There will not be a free news station to be seen.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.